Clout 941. I'm the host, Ron Filipkowski, and tonight we have somewhat of a somber mood on the show because today was kind of a sad day. It was the first day of the Denise Amber Lee murder trial involving the defendant Michael King, and I went and watched the trial today and spent the day in the courtroom, and it was a really difficult, gut-wrenching experience. I've tried over 200 jury trials, criminal trials myself, and so the last thing I ever want to do is go watch somebody else try a criminal case. And I can't remember the last time I did, but for some reason, well, for a lot of reasons I know of, I've kind of been drawn towards this case more so than any other that has occurred here in the last 15 years since I've been practicing law. Some of the reasons are, first of all, the class and the dignity of the Goff and Lee families that they've shown through this difficult time. Two families that are just incredibly tight-knit, great, shown a lot of class, shown a lot of courage and a lot of dignity. Maybe also it was going to the Denise Amber Lee website and her MySpace page that has been set up for her, and taking a look at that and the different pages and seeing the pictures of her with her kids and her husband and reading about the kind of person that she was. Maybe it's also the 911 situation, knowing that her life could have been saved had the 911 operator in this case done their job, and all of the different controversies that have gone on. It is fortunate, though, that Terry Lewis has took over as police chief down in Northport a few years back and has really turned that into a modern professional agency, which it was not before he got there. And the Northport Police Department has done a fantastic job on the criminal investigation in this case. Detective Morales, who's the lead detective in this case, did an excellent job. And this case is pretty much open and shut. I saw the evidence. I listened to what the defense had to say. There really isn't much of a defense in this case. Pretty much their entire defense revolves around the fact that the murder weapon, the gun that was used, was not found on the defendant or in his car when he was pulled over. But of course he could have discarded it along his route, so it's not much of a defense. And the evidence in this case is just absolutely overwhelming. So it was a somber day. It was a tough day. It was tough to hear Denise Lee's the words that she used in her 911 call to the police after she had been abducted, and so tonight we wanted to talk about what it's like to do the job of a criminal defense attorney. It's a difficult job, and so we wanted to put a little bit of a different take on the day and on things that are going on in the justice system. And so our guest tonight is former Assistant Public Defender Adam Tebrugge. Adam, thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome, Ron.
Adam, can you tell us, first of all, for the people who don't know, which is probably very few, a little bit about your background as a lawyer?
I joined the Public Defender's Office in 1984, worked my way up through the ranks, and around 1990 I started handling the capital cases for the 3-county judicial circuit, and I continued doing that until 2008 when I resigned my position. So I handled primarily homicide cases for 15 years.
Most of the big cases that happened in Sarasota County, most of the big murder cases, were you the person primarily responsible for defending them in Sarasota County?
Sarasota, Manatee, and DeSoto County. I handled death penalty cases in all 3 counties.
How many murder cases, not just death penalty cases, how many murder cases do you figure you've handled?
All I know is it's well over 100 homicide cases that I was involved with one way or another. Quite honestly, I stopped keeping track back in the early 90s.
How is it different to do a murder case where the death penalty is involved in your approach and your attitude towards the case versus where they're just seeking life?
If the death penalty isn't involved, I can get the case to trial in 6 or 7 months, get all of my investigation done, and be ready to go into the courtroom. But in a death penalty case, I have an obligation to do a complete life history investigation of the defendant. We have to go back, speak with his family, his teachers, his employers. We have to try and collect every piece of paper that the defendant ever generated in their life. And we do that to look for clues as to arguments we can make to the jury as to why they should spare his life. But the bottom line is, you can't get a death penalty case to trial sooner than about 18 months, and we've had cases take as long as 3 years before they were ready to go to court.
That's because in a lot of those cases, the evidence is kind of easy to sift through or figure out, but the person's life may be complicated, I guess, is what you're saying.
Even if their life isn't complicated, there's travel involved. You have to go to whatever community that they came from. You have to involve expert witnesses that might not be involved in the usual case. And all of this is required by court decisions. And if I failed to do that kind of investigation, then the entire conviction is at risk of being overturned at a later time.
And isn't that kind of the worst case scenario for all the parties involved, for the victim's family, for law enforcement, that there wasn't a clean trial and it wasn't done properly, and that 4, 5, 6 years later you have to come back and do it all over again? Isn't that kind of a nightmare scenario?
It is, and I think that that's an important message to get out to the community, that the defense attorney's job is just as important as anyone else there in the courtroom, so that we can all have confidence in the outcome of the case. If the defense attorney doesn't do his or her job, or if the defense attorney is drunk or on drugs in the courtroom and not providing a proper defense, the whole system collapses around that.
I want to ask you this. You wake up in the morning. This had to have happened to you dozens of times, if not more. You wake up in the morning, you open up the paper, you turn the news on, and you read about some horrible thing that's just happened in the community. Somebody has just been killed or abducted. But for you, it's different than everybody else. For you, you know that maybe that same day or the next day, you're going to have to sit in a room with that person and talk to them. What is it like to open up your paper or read the news being in that position?
Well, I tell you, Ron, I used to give thanks for county lines. Sometimes you'd read about a horrible crime and then you'd realize that it was just over the county line into Charlotte County, which is a completely different judicial circuit, and then I wouldn't have to worry about the case. There's not only the crime, but it's the fact of the arrest that gets my involvement. Unfortunately, some crimes are never solved, and then I don't have to worry about them, at least as an attorney. But once that arrest occurs, we found that we need to get to work right away. In fact, we came up with a protocol in the office for the first 48 hours of defense work on a capital homicide case. And it involves blood and urine collection. It involves an immediate psychological evaluation. It involves immediate contact with the defendant's family. So we really get on top of those cases the second that we're appointed.
Okay, we have to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to have more with Tebrugge on what it's like to defend homicide cases.